All right, guys, let's look at wage differentials. We saw in previous lessons that the supply and demand are going to help to determine the wage rates that are being paid. But there are some things that will cause these wages to be different. The first one is, why do doctors get paid a different amount than, say, um, teachers or lawyers? That is going to be due to our marginal revenue productivity. We talked a little bit about this. Because doctors and lawyers get paid higher amounts for their services, that generates for the law firm or for the doctor office more revenue. So they're going to be in a higher demand. And that higher demand is going to create a higher wage rate. So that marginal revenue productivity has a big impact into the different wages of our different professions. We have non-competing groups. These are individuals where their services, they don't compete against one another. So that's going to lessen the supply in certain markets. Differences in talents. I talked briefly about this in some of the classes. We have professional athletes are probably the best example for this differences in talents. Just the natural ability that we're born with can cause us to have different talents. And we're going to pay accordingly to that. This is seen in teaching all the time, our different levels of education and training. So the more experience you have, the higher people are going to be willing to pay you for the experience that you have gathered. Now, I find the one that is most difficult for you guys to come up with or to understand is this unpleasant or dangerous. We call it compensating differences. This is where the unpleasantness or dangerous activity makes it harder for these firms to get people to work for them. So the more dangerous or the more unpleasant the office is, or the activity that you have to do, the higher the wages you will receive. Because think about it, if it's something that's very unpleasant, you're going to have to be paid an awful lot to agree to engage in that work. So this is what our compensating differences are. That brings us to our market imperfections. These can also interrupt the working of marginal revenue product versus marginal factor cost. One of them is our lack of job information. I could be very well qualified for many jobs, but if I don't know that those jobs are available or in what area they are, I can't apply for them. So that gives it makes it harder for us to build that supply. Because when I apply for a job, I'm putting myself into the supply for that. Geographic immobility. If you read the book, this is pages 342 to 347. And in the book, they talk about geographic immobility, about how people kind of get tied to a certain geographic location. And that is one type of geographic immobility. We're not willing to move places because we've kind of built our comfort zone. There is another type of geographic immobility, and that has to do with what type of job you have. If I was talking, a couple of decades ago, where coal miners, if I was a coal miner, well, I couldn't very well go mine coal in Nebraska because there's no coal there. So the geographic area may dictate where I can look for my job. Unions are a big market imperfection because they're disrupting the natural flow of our supply and demand by trying to manipulate them. Or if we're talking about the case of the inclusive model, they're trying to go around the model by using collective bargaining. We have government restrictions. Government restrictions can also be a market imperfection if there are requirements that we have to follow through or any legislation that we have to follow. The last one, which is quite unfortunate, but discrimination, although illegal, does still occur. This brings us to the second part of the video, which is going to address pay for performance. We use pay for performance to minimize the principal agent problem. That principal agent problem is when the agent works in their own self-interest to the detriment of the principal. This is kind of tied to that shirking that we talked about in the cost unit back in October. So we have 4 types. This one right here kind of gets broken up into 3. We have piece rates. That's where you are going to be paid according to each unit you produce. So the piece rate might be $5 a unit. So if you produce 5, you'll get paid $25. If you produce 100, you'll get paid $500. We have commissions and royalties. These are above your salary that you would get paid. Sales people usually get these commissions, or actors and actresses and movie stars get royalties, or writers, meaning it's a royalty for every book you're sold, you get a certain amount from that sale. Commissions, when you sell a car, you get a certain percentage of that sale. Bonuses, stocks, options, and profit sharing. These are usually in the corporate world. At the end of the year, you get a performance evaluation, and if you do well enough, they'll give you a bonus. They'll add a little bit to it. Stocks, options. These are options to buy stock in the company. Efficiency wages is the 4th area, and that is where the firm would pay higher or above the market equilibrium wage rates, with the idea that if they're paid higher, they feel more valued and they'll be more productive. Now, each of these pay for performances have a negative side effect. The first one, piece rates, the negative side effect is that the more you produce, the more you get paid. So we may have poor quality because the workers are moving too quickly. The commissions and the royalties, that could bring up questionable or fraudulent sales practices because the sales people want to have higher sales. And so it could be questionable. Our bonuses, stocks option, and profit sharing. There are 3 actually. We have our bonuses. So the bonuses could disrupt the close cooperation, because if you're supposed to be working on a team, but you want to get a higher bonus, you may not be working with the other people. The example in the book that they used was like a basketball player. If a basketball player got paid per points that they earned, they may not be throwing the ball around as much. Stock options, that might cause us to have free riders. Profit sharing, that means that you're going to get a portion of the profit. That could cause there to be manipulation of the data that makes it appear that we're more profitable. The efficiency wages, their negative impact would be that there's less turnover. And when we have less turnover, there's less new blood, meaning not as many new people are coming in and you're not going to be getting those fresh ideas. If you have any questions on this, you're going to go to my MCPS classroom and you'll enter your questions on the chart.